Let's get started with this section of working with data, that is data analysis. Working with data is both an art and science, and we have mostly been talking about the science part, but in this chapter, in this section, we will be exploring our data, and that we will do it with the help of the code. So for now, we'll keep the code section apart, and here we will be focusing on creating a new file and exploring various type of data. So every data which we have seen, like when it comes to data visualization, we had a look on the various aspects, such as when it comes to linear charts, line charts, bar charts, and even scatter plots. We had various set of data and its analysis. So now we will be focusing about a simplest case when you have one-dimensional data set, which is the data collection of a numbers. So the first section we will be using is the one-dimensional data set and collecting the data based on the data set. The simplest case is when you have the one-dimensional data set is just a collection of numbers. For example, these could be daily average number of minutes each user spends on your site, or it can be the number of time each of the collection of the data science tutorials you have been watched, or the number of the pages each of the data science books is present in the data science library. So first of all, we will focus on a uniform histogram, that is creating a normal set of data, and that we will be focusing in our chapter. So our code now will be for uniform histogram dot py. Here we will be creating the data set in such a way, like first thing is we will be creating various set of functions. So it's a histogram, so it will require several set of values which will be common. So histogram always calls for the plot library, random library, and the math library. In this section, it will even call for the counter. So now it will say import math, then comes import random, and after that comes the next section, that is from matplotlib import pyplot as plt, and then comes the next section from collections import counter. So once this section is being done, then we can go to the bucket size listing. So where we will be defining our own bucketize section. So def bucketize section, where point and bucket size will be mentioned. And then comes the rule for return bucket size into math.floor value with the value mentioned as point divided by bucket size. So this bucket is nothing but to get the values represented inside the bucket. So our first function, a good step, is to create a histogram. So we will be starting to create a histogram by grouping our data into discrete buckets and the count of how many points fall into each bucket. So that is done with the function bucketize, which has been done. After that comes the next function is to make histogram. So we will create a histogram over here, that is def make histogram, and after this we'll create the point section, that is points, and the next will be given as bucket size, and after that we will be creating the value of the particular points. So we will return it with the help of counter, return value of a counter with a bucket size, that is bucketize function, and the values will be point, comma, bucket size. Now this bucket size needs to be represented inside a particular point, so it will be mentioned with the for loop as for point in points. So this part is being done successfully. After that comes the next scenario is to plot my particular histogram. So for that I'll call for a function def plot histogram, value as points, And then comes the next thing is the bucket size. And after that comes is the title. So title will be kept as blank. And later we'll have the different values associated to it as histogram equals make histogram with a value of points, bucket size, and then we will plot the particular bar over here as plt.bar histogram.keys, and then the next section will be mentioning the values, so that will be histogram.values, and after that the next thing will be the width to be associated with it. So width will have a value of a bucket size, so that will be the bucket size. And the next section will be the title which needs to be plotted, so that will be taken as the title which is mentioned over here. Till now we created various set of histograms directly without creating the function. Here it is quite different. We are declaring a function named plot histogram, and over here we are mentioning the parameters points, bucket size, title, and many more. And after that we will be getting the value associated to it. Now we will plot our graph as plt.show. So this section has been done successfully. Now after this it is important to create a various set of values. So starting with the random.seed with a 0 value. It's like initializing your value to 0. Uniform equals 200 into random.random, and this random value will be taken as -100 for range, in range mentioned as epic value of 10,000, and then we will be calculating the range values as plot histogram with a value of uniform with a width of 10, and then comes is the uniform histogram. This is going to be my title. So the third parameter is the title. So this section has been done successfully. So after this, the next important thing is like we'll go to our code base. This is my code base, and here I'm going to plot our values. So that will be Python uniform histogram. Here I'm getting a values of range. There is some error, so let's calculate on this part. In range with the value to be mentioned, this goes to the space parameters which is needed. Now just run a particular code. So this gives me the uniform histogram. This was about exploring the one-dimensional data. As you can see, it is the one-dimensional data with the values being like choked up together to show the histogram bars. The next thing we will be doing is plotting the normal histogram, and that is done with a function which we had done in our previous chapters during a normal distribution curve and creating the central limit theorem of the probability, where we plotted out with the various points over there. So that thing we will be doing right now in this chapter as well. So let's get started with the next section, which would be about the normal histogram.